Welcome to this tutorial on protocols, delegates. We're going to do some work also on custom views, and we're also going to have a look at using the UI responder for doing touches and taps. Okay, so we're just going to have a look at this drawing application. We're not going to build all of this, we're just going to build part of it. So what you can do here is we can select a shape. I'm going to select a circle, and we can then place these down. Okay. Now this application will preserve this drawing data wherever we put it inside a model. So we must remember that views must never contain their own data, so we can't store the data which responds to this view in the view itself, nor would we store it in the controller. We'd obviously use a model class to do so. So we'll just first think about what this view requires. Well, in this case, we'll probably design it just for one shape, but a shape would be a property of this. Clearly the position of where it is on the screen is the other main property of it as well. And as we can also pick different colours here, colour would also be a property of this as well. Okay, so that's at least 3 properties, and there could be more as well, which we must maintain in a model. Now, as I put a new, these are all drawings, these aren't views, this is all done in Core Graphics. As I put one of these things down, I need to update the model to say, hey, here's a new part of the view, here's its position, this is the what it is, it's a square, it's a circle, and this is its colour. And every time I do this, apart from updating the model, which is going to update some model class or some object that represents the model, the screen itself must then use the updated model to redraw, because clearly every time I do this there's a redraw on the screen going on. So the view needs to signal that something on itself has changed to the view controller, and the view controller must therefore after that update the model, and then the view controller must also then be able to pass, and the view itself must be able to ask for the latest updated model, which is just representing the screen. We could also, of course, persistently save this, and as you can see down here, it's reasonably easy to also send an image of the screen, which will be saved in the Pictures application. Okay, so we're just going to build a small portion of this in this tutorial, and we're going to look at these custom views, we're going to look at protocols, and we'll also look how to do some Core Graphics. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to create a new project, and for this we're just going to create a single view application. Okay, usual thing here, we need to put the name of our app or product name in, and I'm going to call this just Core Graphics. I'll just call it Core Graphics. Okay, you can put a company identifier in there. Prefix will just be the name given before each of your own class names. We're going to target the iPhone. We can use a storyboard. We'll get away with just a plain zip file as well here, so there's no real need for a storyboard in this case, but I'll leave that in. And of course, as always, we're going to use automatic reference counting. Okay, and we're just going to put this down. Hopefully I haven't got one called that. I'm going to cancel that because I've already got one called that, so I'll call it Core Graphics Demo instead. And change that as well. Okay, that looks more like it. And we're just going to create that. You can't press it. Hold on. Okay, I've just done a rename and I'm going to call this drawing example, so hopefully there you go, that's fine. Okay, we're not going to support these two modes. We will support upside down. We can do that, and that's really it for all we need to do for the setup anyway. So we can just run this, check everything's okay, and we'll just get our single view like so. So we're going to actually use this view as our drawing area. In this case, for this tutorial, we won't be putting in the toolbar at the bottom or the buttons, so we're quite happy just drawing on this single view for this particular demonstration. Okay, we need our own custom view. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new class. And before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new group actually, which just gives us a folder. And if we very carefully, I'll come back to that, it's a bit awkward sometimes. What I want to do is rename it. But we're going to put our views inside here. So inside that group, we're going to do a new file. And we don't want a view controller because we have a view controller. We're just going to actually override the current view we've got. So we just actually want a view. So we're going to just do an Objective-C class. We'll just call it our draw view. And it's saying, what are you a subclass of? Well, we're going to make it a subclass of UI view in this case. And do next. And that's fine. Make sure we're targeting this build. And there we have it. Because we've specified it to be a subclass of UI view, as we can see here, it's done this for us, and also it's given us an init with frame as well. And it says, if you read these comments here, it says only override draw act if you perform custom drawing. Well, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. So we do want to, we're going to uncomment this because we're going to be doing some drawing here. Okay, that's fine. Right. Okay, what I've managed to do is I've renamed this. Usually if you just tap into it once and wait, it will highlight it and then you can change the name. So give it a name such as views, and it's a good idea to break up, to have these groups such as a group for views, a group for controllers, and probably a group for models as well. So we'll do that also. So here I've just added another group. I've tapped inside it and I'm going to say models inside there, and that's where I'm going to create another class. So if you click on the group and do new file, this time we're just going to have a plain Objective-C class that's actually going to inherit from NSObject. We're just going to call this our draw model. So this will be a model that represents everything that you can see on the screen. Okay, finish that. And there we have it. Nothing in it, just a plain old Objective-C object that only inherits from NSObject. So what we need to do is decide what properties we're going to give this. Okay, so what we're going to do then is we're going to have a think about what properties our drawing should have. Well, this is the draw model, so it actually represents the whole screen, or a screen full of drawing if you like. So we're missing a class here. We need something that represents probably the individual shapes that we see on the screen, because they have a property of what type of shape they are, what type of colour they are, and whereabouts they are on the screen. And so what we're going to do is, it probably means we need another class. So we're going to go into our models group again. We're going to do another new file, and this time we're going to call it shape, which is going to represent one of the shapes on the screen. Again, it's just going to be a plain NSObject. I'm going to add that too. Okay, and there we have it. Right, so let's just have a think about what properties we want for this. Okay, well, the first thing we need is, we know these shapes exist somewhere on the screen, so we need a property of point, which is just going to be something that stores the coordinate of the shape on the screen. So what we're going to use here, we're going to use a Core Graphics point, which is a structure. You'll notice, because it's a structure, we do not use a star here. It's not a reference type, it's a value type. So we're going to do that, and then we need to make sure that we, inside here, synthesize the property. Point, sorry. Okay. And if we're going to do it correctly, we're going to use this convention. So we know the difference between the instance. Probably not the best name to use in that case. Yes. Okay, that's fine. No, that should be fine. Sometimes you get keywords or other definitions such as point, and it doesn't like you using them as variable names. Okay, so that looks all fine. What's this name in there? No, that's all done. Okay. Okay, the other property we may consider having, we're not going to worry about the actual shape of these objects at the moment, because we're only going to draw a single shape. But we might be concerned about the colour, so we'll have another property of colour. So, non-atomic, strong, and this time we're going to use a UI color, which is a UI kit class. So this is of course a reference type, and we'll call that color. It wants to keep capitalizing things. Right, finally. Okay. And again, we need to make sure that we synthesize this as well. Okay, now we're there. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our draw model. Now we've defined what a shape is. And we are going to define some properties of our draw model. Okay, first of all, we know we're going to use these shapes, so I'm going to import the header file for it, which is just called shape.h. Okay, that's good. And then finally, we're just going to define our model that represents our screen full of shapes in this way. So we're just going to do non-atomic, strong, and we're going to use an NS mutable array, which is at the top there. We can just call this either screen or shapes. I will call it shapes, like so. Okay, and then again, just going to do our second part of this, which is to synthesize it. Like so. So we haven't done anything yet. We haven't done anything with views, nothing with view controllers. What we thought about is how we're going to model this screen. And so what we've done is we've defined something that we're calling a shape object. And a shape object just has a property of point and colour. And then we've defined another model, which is to represent a screen full of these shapes. And we've defined that to simply be a mutable array of shapes. Now, of course, we'd want a mutable array because you might want to remove things off the screen, add things on the screen. So we couldn't use any kind of fixed array. That wouldn't make sense. We want a collection which will shrink and grow to our requirements. Okay, what we're going to work on next is we're going to have a look at our view. At the moment, our code's not going to do anything. we've just defined some model classes, so we're going to do some work in our draw view, which remember is just a class, is just a subclass of UI view. And we're going to do some things in this draw rect. Now the draw rect gets called every time that the screen or view needs to be updated. And that could be several reasons. It could be something that the user's done, it could be signalled from the operating system, lots of different reasons when this happens. But generally it's called when we call a set needs display on this view, so that's how you can control it, and you never call draw rect directly. That's very important. You don't do that because that's what the operating system's there to do. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to, we'll just delete this, don't need this. And the first thing we're going to do is, before we can do any drawing, we need to get a graphics context, and this is true of pretty much all the programming frameworks, and it usually looks something like this: equals UI graphics get current context, and this is obviously a C. Most of the commands that when you're doing core graphics are actually C, and with the occasional bit of Objective C. So this is why it looks a bit different to the standard Objective C that you've seen. Okay, so that gives me a graphics context now. Okay. Okay, so what we're going to do, just to get us going, I'm going to do some basic core graphics and draw an ellipse. In which case, we're going to define a rectangle, a rectangle that we're going to essentially draw a circle into. So the first thing we need to do, and you generally need to do this, is we need to define a rectangular area. So a command we commonly use is cgrect, which is a core graphics rectangle, call it R, equals, and then there's a convenience method which is cgrect make a rectangle. We're just going to place it fairly randomly, so I'm going to put this at 200. The Y position is going to be 200. We can always change this later. And we're going to do it 30 pixels by 30 pixels. So it's telling you what it is. It's saying that it's point X, point Y, the width, and then the height. So I'm going to do it with 30, like so. Okay. Then we're just going to fill it with a colour. There's a few ways of doing this, but I'll use the core graphics way. I could have used a UI colour. There's an Objective-C way of doing this as well. So that's just going to be context set RGB fill colour, like so. We need to pass it the context that we've got above, which is just context, like this. And then we'll just make this red. Okay, so in this case, we're going to set this to be 255. We're going to set green to be 0 and blue to be 0. And we're going to have an alpha of 1. Anything less than 1 will give you a transparency. So if you set it to a half, it will be semi-transparent, exactly, and so on. So you could have a go with that. And then finally, we need to fill this. So we do a core graphics context fill, we want to do an ellipse, which is the top one. So you can see context fill ellipse in rectangle, so that's what we want. We again pass it the context. We've only got one, which is there, and then we have one rectangle which we've defined above, which is R, and we should be done. Okay, just build that and that's fine. Okay, if we run this, of course nothing's going to happen, so we're going to do that first of all. As we can see, we're running it and nothing's happening because the view we're looking at is the view that's contained in the storyboard, which we've actually done no work on whatsoever. We've actually been just working on our own custom class, so we're going to do something different about that. So let's now go to our storyboard. So we're just going to have a look at this, and there it is. And what we're going to do is we need to define this view to be one of our subclasses. We actually want it to be the view that we've just subclassed, the draw view. So we want it to be a draw view, not just a plain UI view. So if we go into this tab here, which is just next to the attributes inspector, this is called the identity inspector. So if we just have a quick look at that, you can see it's there. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a different class for this, and as you can see, our draw view is actually listed, and there it is. So do that. We're just going to save it, and now what we've done is, if you have a look at this, you can see that it's actually renamed it here as well. This is now our draw view. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to run this again. And here it is. You can see this is the red ellipse, the circle in fact, that we've drawn on this view. So that's great, everything's working. Okay, so we've got no control whatsoever. All we're doing is we are hard coding this drawing, core graphic drawing, into our view on the draw rect. The draw rect will get called as soon as the view pops up. Okay, what we want to do now is I want to add a tap gesture recognizer to this view, so that when the user taps it, one of our circles appears under the tap position. So what we need to do is we now need to go to our view controller, which is here. Okay, we need to do something in here. I'm going to not delete these. I'm going to leave these in for now, because we're not going to use many of these, but we will use probably use the view did load a bit later on. Okay, so what we're going to do, we'll do it at the top, just below here, and we're going to add a method, which is just a private method on here, which is just called add gesture to view. Okay, like so. Okay, and inside this, what we want to do is we want to add one of our UI tap gesture recognizers. We could probably do this through Interface Builder graphically, in which case it would be included in the nib file, but we wouldn't have as much control over that, and that's also worth seeing how to do this programmatically as well. So what we need is we need a UI tap gesture recognizer. Don't forget to use the star. I'm just going to call this gesture, and we want that equal to a UI tap gesture recognizer. We're going to, of course, allocate as always and initialize it. Okay, so we're going to init with target. Now this is the target, is essentially the object it wants to, that we're going to attach it to. So in this case we actually want to attach it to the view that belongs to this view controller. We've got a bit more work to do here yet, but at the moment I'm just going to call it self.view. We probably do need to modify that. And then the action, I haven't got a selector yet. Remember, a selector is just simply a method, so I'm going to make one up, and it's probably going to complain, but we'll just live with it for now, so just to get it in. So action will be at selector, we'll call a selector, we'll call it draw shapes. We'll call it draw screen. Okay. And for now we're not going to, it probably will need one argument because it will take an argument of the gesture recognizer, so we're just going to leave that in for now and finish that, and that should do that, and that should do that. Okay, now It probably will build. Now, the reason it will build because Objective-C will not check if this draw screen exists at compile time. It allows you to do this, which is good and bad. So obviously, if this got called at runtime, it would just be simply, it may throw an error or it may just return nil. But anyway, we need to sort of implement this. Okay. Okay, so that's fine. What we do need to do though is we need to define this selector, which we've called draw screen, which will take an argument. And actually, the argument we want to take is a UI tap gesture recognizer. Of course, the target is not the controller, the target's the view, therefore the selector must also be on the view. So we're going to switch back to our draw view, and we're going to put this method in. Okay, so it's going to be a void, and it was draw screen, like so, and it takes the argument of a UI tap gesture recognizer. We'll just call it gesture. Okay, so now we have it. Okay, let's save that and just check I've got the right name. So I've got draw screen, take an argument of a tap gesture recognizer, and we called it draw screen, taking a single argument. Notice here it's actually not defining at all what argument it takes, so this doesn't really care. It's just saying it's been unused, so I'll build that, and that's fine. It just talks about an unused variable, so that's no problem. So far so good. Okay, what I need to do is make sure this can be seen publicly. So I'm going to I've lost it. There it is. I'm going to take the selector that we've just defined here, this draw screen, and I'm going to forward declare it inside the header file, and otherwise we won't be able to see it, and that should be fine. Okay, no complaints. Okay, and there we have it. Okay, what we're going to do with this then? Well, out of the gesture, when the user taps the iPhone screen, then what will happen is this selector will get called. What we want to do is we want to interrogate the gesture. And the first thing we want to do is we want to essentially get the location in the view where the user tapped, and we can do this using CG point. Point equals gesture. We have this quite simple thing which is just location in view, like so. Obviously the view in this case is self because we're in the UI view, and like so. Okay, and we're done with that. Okay, so what we could do, just to test this is working, we could simply output point.x, point.y to an NSLog just to prove this is all working for us. So let's do that. So let's do a NSLog, and we will do NSString in a string with format. We're going to use just a float, so we'll like so. We're going to output point. Sorry, that made me laugh. Point.x. What's wrong with it? Missing a comma. Okay, yeah, I've spotted it. We need some square brackets here. Around that. Okay, that's just going to complain about the formatting, but it should work. Okay, so let's just... Never mind. Okay, so let's just do the same with white. I've not quite got that formatting string right, but let's try anyway. Okay. Right, so that's just going to output, hopefully, some points where the user tapped the screen. But we've yet to add the gesture. We have defined a method, but we still haven't actually added it to the view yet. So let's do that next. So we're back in our view controller where we have our add gesture to view method. And what we need to do is that's just basically Alecton initialize the gesture. We can do some settings on it as well. For example, we could do gesture dot number of taps required. So if we only want, if you want to respond on 3 taps, 2 taps, we could do that. We'll do 2 just for fun. So you can insist that this actually only gets fired. In what that means is it will only call the selector once the user has tapped the screen in an area twice. Okay, it'd probably have to be in the same area as well. It wouldn't work if they tapped in 2 different places. Okay, so we'll leave that there, and then finally we need to add it. So we do self dot view, and this is the important one. So it's the top one, which is to add the gesture recognizer. We have one here which is called gesture, which we've just defined above. Okay, so that line actually adds it to this view controller's view, and we should be done then. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is just going to fix these with something a bit easier actually. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do it a simpler way, which is we're going to call this the X position is we don't need that name more, is F. Okay, and then we're going to pass it our float value. We don't need that, and we don't need that. That's sorted. Okay, that's a lot better. Okay, so replace your previous ones with this code, which is now correct. Okay, that's fine. Okay, right, now we have something we've got to do in our view controller still before we can really use this view. Although it appears to be working, in actual fact the view controller doesn't really have a handle to this particular class. So what we need to do is we need to go back to our view controller and do this line, which is just simply to import it. Okay, but also the view controller must have a property of the view as well. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So property, and it's going to be non-atomic strong, like so. And we can we want it to be a draw view, like so, and we can call it draw view like this. Okay, and then finally we need to synthesize that here. Synthesize our draw view. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to replace where we've done self.view, we now want to use self.drawView in fact. So we're just going to finish this off correctly here. Okay, like so. Now it is because of the way the view comes out of the nib. The actual object that gets instantiated out the nib isn't the same as what we've got on here, so it's important that we do this. So we have to actually, instead of targeting what's coming out of the nib, if you like, what we are going to target is in fact this subclass which we've got draw view. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put draw view in. Okay, everywhere we've done it, we're going to do it in a few places, so like so, and we don't worry about the rest. Okay, that's fine. Okay, now we've sorted that out, what we now need to do is we actually need to run this method in an appropriate place. So a good place to do it is when the view's loaded, so which is this line here. Okay, we're going to use the view did load. So we can do any additional setup after this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add our UI tap gesture recognizer to this view controller's view, which we've now made to be what it owns one of, this draw views. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do self dot add gesture to view. Okay, like so. So when this gets when the application gets run, this view controller's view loads and this method gets called. It will then add a gesture to the draw view, which we can now test. Okay, so we're nearly there, able to test it now. One thing we do need to do is we need to make sure that we define this property draw view up here, but actually we also want to make sure it's an outlet for our view. So we do IB outlet like so. Oops, don't need that. Okay, and then we should get one of these circles here. So it's not wired yet, so we're going to go back to our storyboard and we're going to right click here, and you can see we've got this outlet for draw view, and we're going to wire that to there, which may seem peculiar, but it's just something that we've got to do. So okay, and we're done. So we're just going to save it, build it, and make sure that's all okay, so we can go back to our view controller and we can see that's all wired up and should be ready to go now. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to run our code. Test it. Here, as we can see, we've got the red circle that we've been drawing. I'm going to tap somewhere near the center of that, and you can see that on my console you can select this by if you do this part of the view up here, this lower panel, and you can either select the output between all, the debugger output, which is this bit, target output, which is what we're really interested in. You can see that as I now tap on the screen, it tells me the position. So up here, which is close to 0, 0, it's saying that the X position is 13, the Y position is 7, right down to down here, which is saying that the X position is 309 and the Y position is 446. So that means we know that everything's working. We've added the gesture to the view here, and when we have two taps, that is then calling this selector here, which is on the target, which is the view called draw screen. And we're going to have a look at this, and we can see that this then gets called this draw screen selector, which is just simply outputting the point onto an NS log, and that's what we can see here. So far so good, and of course now we know the location of the gesture tap under the screen, it means we could now quite easily draw a circle there. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so one way we could do this, this is without invoking any model whatsoever, is we're just going to go to our header file, and we need, in fact, we probably don't want to do this here. We probably want to do it as a private interface, and we can declare a variable, a property, sorry, called point, which we can just use privately inside this class here. So that's what we're going to do. So we want to do an at interface, so it's that one we want. The class name has got to be the same name, which is draw view. Okay, we're not interested in the superclass, but we do need one of these. Just going to get rid of that. Okay, and get rid of this inside here. Are you going to fix it? Okay, yep, good. Okay, well done. So that's good. So we'll just get rid of this. Don't really need that either. Okay, so what we remember, if we declare an interface inside the M file, the implementation file, what that just means is that it's a private interface. If it's in the header file, it then becomes a public interface. This is just a point. I don't, at the moment anyway, want to have that available publicly. It's just something I'm going to use internally in this class. So I'm going to have a property let's do something with this. Okay, what we're going to do is just actually needs to go outside these. So we're just going to put this line in, which is declaring this property, which is called current position, and we then also need to synthesize this as well. So I'm going to do that here. Current point, sorry. Okay. Okay, so we now have this private property, which is just a CG point, which is called current point. And what we can do then, of course, is we can assign, let's just get this right, like so. We can assign the point that we get out of the gesture to be our current point, set the property of this class. So we've got self dot current point equals point, like so, which is good because now means this is accessible here. So we should be able to just feed it straight away into our drawRect method, where we're creating this rectangle. So instead of me explicitly putting this in, I'm going to do self dot current point dot x and self dot current point dot y. Okay, otherwise everything else should be the same. Okay, so what will happen now is that when we double tap, it will run into this selector method. We get the point out of the gesture, and then we're going to assign our private property to be the current point, but we're not finished yet because it won't do anything until we tell it to redraw. And the way we do that, as we've said, we don't call drawRect directly. We say self set needs display. Okay, you can actually target a particular rectangle. In this case, we're just going to target the whole view with set needs redisplay. Okay, so let's run this, see if it works. Okay, it's going to do this anyway because the default will be that our position is initially 0, because the drawRect gets called the first time the view is loaded. And as we now tap the various areas of the screen. We can see that we're getting our circle drawn from the upper left hand side of the rectangle. It's not very good really. We probably want to move it to really draw to the centre, which will just look better, so we can fix that. Okay, we just stop that and we'll just do that little fix. Okay, so what we need to do is, because we have a rectangle which is 30 by 30, we just need to move this to be to the midpoint. So it'd be minus 15.0 and minus 15.0. That should do it. So just test this. Okay, that's much better. Now you can see that the circle's been drawn at the centre of the touch. Okay, so far so good. So we will probably just comment these out now because we don't need them anymore. We've done our testing. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is, we want ideally for our drawing to be built up. So if I put a point down here, then another point here and another point here, I want the model to remember these, and I want the view to ask for what the latest model is each time I do a redraw. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so what we're going to do is, I want my view to be able to tell the view controller when it has changed. In this case, it's changed by someone tapping on the screen and drawing a new circle. So that's one thing I want to be able to do. But then I also want to be able to ask the view controller when I need to be redrawn, as in me, the view. I need you to give me the latest model. So we need to do these two things. And so what we're going to do is, we're going to do this via a protocol. So if we go to the header file of the draw view, what we're going to do is we're going to define a protocol here. And normally this is where you would do it. You define a protocol in the class that needed to be delegated. So and we're going to call it our draw view data source protocol, because really that's what it is. It's going to, whoever implements this protocol is going to be the data source of this view, as in it's going to pass this model to us. Okay, we're happy with that, so we're just going to carry on some of our methods. So we're going to say have some required methods. Everything we're going to define is going to be required. So we want a method to update the model. Call this update model, like so. And what all we're going to do is we're going to keep it simple. So we're just going to pass it a point, which is going to tell us where the shape is. P. Okay. So that's pretty straightforward. Okay. And what we also need to do is we need to ask it, well, here's the update of the model, can you give me back the latest model? Which effectively, remember, the view holds no data, it has no knowledge of all these points on the screen at all. So it has to ask its data source for this. In this case, this is the view controller. So we need another method. While the view will say here, I have a new point to be added to the model, but now I need the latest model so I can redraw myself with all the previous points that have gone before as well. So this needs to be a mutable array, which is we're going to pass. Don't forget the star in there. Something wrong with that, but I'll sort that out in a minute. And it's going to be called get latest. We'll call it latest model. Could call it latest screen. Okay. No, that's fine. That's good. Okay. So that's done. We've defined our protocol. Okay. So what we now need to do to be able to call these methods as a delegate, we have this standard way of doing it, and we're just going to do that next. So what we need to do is we need to define a property like so. Okay, and it's going to be non-atomic. In this case it's going to be weak, and that's because the delegate, because it's a view on the delegate, that it almost certainly always doesn't outlive the view controller, so there's no reason to have it strong in this case. It's of type ID, and it must implement the protocol above. So we have our draw view data source protocol. We're going to give it the name. Traditionally you would do this, you would just call it delegate. Okay, that's great. And this will just be saying, well, everything's good, but you need to define the synthesize for it. So we're going to go here, and we're going to synthesize delegate. Okay, and we're done. So let's just have a look at that code again. Yep, good, that warning's gone. So here it is. We define our protocol. We've given it two required methods, which is the update model and then get the latest model, and then we've defined a property on the drawView class, which is a delegate which must implement this particular protocol. Okay, and we're done with that. Okay, now, well, who's going to implement this protocol? It's going to be the view controller, because the view controller is going to be the thing that passes out our data model. So the first thing we must do is actually tell the compiler that this is going to be the case. We've already got the import here, which is the drawview.h, but therefore it will also import this protocol. So and it was data, yeah, okay, so if I just start typing this, there's only one protocol available, which is this drawView data source. So if I simply tab that, close this off, okay, and if I build this, it should complain, and it's just saying method in protocols not implemented. Okay, it's not actually telling me which ones, but it's just saying I've got an incomplete implementation, and that's as to be expected, because we defined the methods inside our protocol in drawView to be required. If we didn't have them required, then it wouldn't actually complain, because they wouldn't be things we had to implement, but in this case we do. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to then implement our skeletal methods somewhere inside here. So if we have a look what they are again, we need something called update model, and we need something called get latest model. Okay, so we're going to take these two from there, and we're just going to put them down somewhere here. Just looking for a good spot. We may as well put them at the top. Okay, so we're just going to do this. Obviously this will give us an error, so we need to just sort them out. That's one. This returns a mutable array, so it's a bit more tricky. It's going to complain here because it's not returning anything. I should be able to just say return nil, and that just for now. The only reason I'm doing that is just to simply stop, so the compiler won't give me a warning here. And we're done. So I'm just going to build this, and you can see I've got no issues here at all, so it's perfectly happy with that. These don't do anything, but at least they're in, so the compiler, as far as the compiler is concerned, we've met our requirements of implementing those two methods that were found inside that protocol. Okay, now we've got that, what we need to do really is look inside. We need to do a little bit more work in the view controller. There's a line of code which we'll look at in a bit, where you need to tell, you need to say which the delegate, who is the delegate, in which case we are saying we're going to point that towards the view controller, but we'll look at that in a minute. What we need to do is the draw view must have some way now of making use of these models that we've defined in here. Okay, so what we therefore would want to do is to make sure we import our draw model. So we're going to do that next. Import draw model. H in here. Okay, that's good. Right, and then let's just remind ourselves what's inside in here. So in the draw model, it simply gives us this mutable array of shapes. That's what we're going to do, and what we need to do is we're going to use that to update the model, update the screen that we have. Okay, so just to prepare for what we need, we're back in the view controller. What the view controller needs, it needs to know about our draw model. So we're going to put that in here. Some of you have to be a bit careful with these because sometimes they become cyclic. The import should take that out. As chances are the draw view also has a draw model, in which case you get it anyway. So you've got to be a bit careful with these sometimes. Hopefully the compiler will warn you if that's a problem. But the import's a bit smarter than the include, so it shouldn't give us any trouble. And also we need the shape as well in there. So we've got everything we need inside there. Inside our drawing view, we also need the models. So let's just check. We've got that. Yes, we've got that. Okay, so we should have everything we need now to start implementing these two protocol methods. Okay, just looking at this, I'm going to slightly change the naming of this because I would prefer to call this protocol method update model with point, which is much more an Objective-C way of doing things. So I'm going to have to make a change elsewhere, and that reads better now. It makes sense. So it's update model with point P. So I'm going to copy that, and I am going to update this here. Let me do that. Like so. Let's just build that. That should be okay. Okay, that makes more sense now. So that was just really to improve the readability of that. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going back to our view, and in here, when the user taps on the screen, what we want to do is we want to first of all get the position where they've tapped and then update the model with that position. So somewhere around here we need to call the method on the delegate to update the position. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so what we'll do is we can do it here when we come into this draw it method. So this gets called just after the draw screen gets called. We get the self set needs redisplay, which calls this, and this is where we can do it. So what we do is we have a delegate, and we have a method on it which is called update model with point, CG point, and the point we want is the one that we extracted from the gesture, and we made equal to a property on this class called current point, like so. Okay, and that's fine. Okay, now what we want to do is have a look at now how we've implemented on the view controller this method, which is the update model with point, in which case we want to actually create a model out of the draw model and push these points inside it. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so here we are in our update model with point P, and what we're going to do is we're going to hopefully create, yeah, there is a new shape each time this gets called, which we want to push into our model's mutable array. So equals shape, oops, Alec, and init, and we're done. Okay, so there's one, and we want to, this should have a property of point with a bit of luck. There it is. We want that to be the point that we're passing in, which is this P. So what we've done is we've created a new shape object. We've set the property of this new object to be P. We did have colour on the shape as well, which we could pass in, but we're not dealing with colour at the moment. So we're done with this. And then we want to actually, we've got a draw model which we need to instantiate first. So we're going to leave this for now because I've not instanced it yet. So let's just leave that and do that first. So we're going to do that in the view did load. So just after we've added the gesture, we can, there's a couple of things we're going to do here now actually. What we're going to do is we'll do this very crucial line, and if you forget this it won't work, so we have to set the delegate. So what we're doing is we're saying self draw view, we need to set that's delegate, so set delegate like so, and you can see it's trying to help you out here, and that's the delegate that we're setting this class to be, so we need to just set this to self. Okay, so what we're doing is we're saying that the views data source protocols delegate is this view controller. So if you don't do this line, these delegate methods don't work. When the view tries to call one of the delegate methods, it'll just go nowhere, in fact, until it's got this line. We need to tell it which of these classes is actually implementing this protocol, and in this case we're telling the draw view that the delegate is being set to its view controller, which is here, which is self in this case. Hope that makes sense. So we're done with that. Crucial, very, very important line. So what we're going to do now is we need to instance one of the draw models that we can push these shapes into. We have one called draw model in here, like so, and let me just check this. I want to make sure this is right. Hang on. Yeah, okay, yeah, before we can do this we just want to go to the header, and what I need is I need a draw model in here as a property, so I can set it. So non-atomic, strong, and it's a draw model we want. I'm just going to call that a lowercase draw model, like so. That's better. Okay, we must synthesize it as well. So here we are. So synthesize draw model underscore draw model, like so. Okay, that's better. Now, okay, so we want one of these a property. We need this to be a property because the view. Because we need to be able to. It could have been private actually. It didn't actually need to be public. We've done it as public, but not to worry too much about that. Okay, so that's good. We've added the delegate, and what we're going to do now is we're finally going to instantiate this thing. So self dot draw model equals draw model Alec and init, Now that we've got one of these, we've now got our draw model object, which is owned by this view controller. We can now start pushing points into it, pushing these shapes into it. Okay, back here then to update model with point. We now have our draw model for self.drawModel, sorry. Draw model. And we must use one of these square brackets because we're going to call a method on it, which is to, hopefully it's got an array called shapes. There they are. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are using a property on our draw model, which is shapes, which was a mutable array, and we're going to add an object to it. And the object we're going to add is a point with a bit of luck, and that's probably not going to work, so I'm going to have to check that. It needs to be a shape, of course. Okay, S. That's better. That should do it. Yeah. Okay. So what we've got here in this line, the view as flagged to the view controller that it's now got a new drawing on it, which it does via its call when we do the set needs redisplay. This is calling this update model with point. At that, when it arrives here, we need to create a new shape. We allocate the point that we're getting passed into that shape, and then we want to add that shape to our model. And we do that by just simply talking to a property which is on draw model, which is a mutable array of shapes, and then we're just going to add the shape in, and we're just going to repeat this cycle. So as a user presses on the screen, we just go through this cycle. We add a new object, we add a new object, we add a new object. So the next part of this, of course, is once we've done this, the view then needs to request this model and say, well, I need all the new shapes so I can redraw them to the screen. So that's what we're going to tackle next. Okay, so back in our draw view, here we are, in our drawRect method. We were here. What we've done is we'd updated the model with the point. And what we need to now do, actually before we draw anything, is we need to request the latest model from our view controller. So effectively the updated model. So what we're going to do here is we've got self.delegate here, and we want get latest model in here, and let me just check this line of code is correct. I think that's all it was actually. Okay, let me just sort this out. Yes, okay, yeah, what we'll do is we'll just declare local mutable array. So we want an NS mutable array here because that's what this should be returning. And we're just going to call this shapes. Equals get latest model. Yeah, hopefully that's fine. Yeah, so it's just saying it's unused, which is great. Okay, no problem with that. Let's build that. Now, all that's really left us to do is to iterate over the length of this array, which we will have a look at, and draw the shapes that we find inside the model. Okay, so we're going to do this in a for loop. So we have for int I equals 0 to I less than shapes dot count, which just gives us the length of the mutable array currently. Oops. Okay, inside here, and just leave that there. Okay, so and really what we need to do at this point is to be able to pull out the point out of these shapes and feed it into the code that we've got below, which will enable us to draw a circle at the point that's indicated by the shapes coming out of this mutable array, which represent the model. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to take this code here, cut that, and we're going to put it inside our loop. Okay, and now what we want to do is we want to basically pull out our shape objects outside of this mutable array. So we are going to declare a brand new shape each time this happens, equal to shapes. What way we do this, we just pick out the object. So we have the object at index I in this case, like so, and close that, and that should be fine. Okay. Now because we have a shape as a property of point, so we should just be able to feed this directly in here. So we'll give that a go. So we have a shape S dot point dot x, and the same thing here. So we have S dot point dot y. Okay, let me just check the rest of that. So just to go over this piece of code here, what we're doing here is we are calling a method from our delegate, which is the view controller, to request the latest model, having previously updated the model. And then what we're getting returned is a mutable array of shapes. We are then iterating over the length of that array, and we're pulling out each element of that array, a shape, at one at a time, and then we're assigning this rectangle its x and y, its point coordinates, to be whatever was stored inside that shape, and hopefully this should work. Okay, yep, tested that. That's not going to work yet, of course. We're just back into our view controller, and that's because we've yet to implement this bit of code, which is to get the latest model. Okay, so we need to do that first, so we'll just do that now. Okay, so there's just a couple more things we need to do actually before this will work. If we have a look at our models, we have a shape and we have a draw model. Okay, if we look at the draw model actually contains the mutable array, which is key for us to passing this mutable array of shapes around, and we need to actually initialize it here, because if you remember, when you put down a property of something, that doesn't mean it's initialized, it's just a declaration. So what we're going to do here, and I'm just going to take some code here because it's be a bit easier. We're using a standard initialization method, like so. So this is just a standard init, so it's self super init if self. This is our crucial line here, and we can either do that, or actually we should really do use this one in this case. That probably will work. Okay, so that's just what we've had to add to our draw model to make sure that we actually have a allocated shapes mutable array. Okay, now we'll go back to our draw view and just check everything's okay in here. Okay, so yep, looks like we are ready to go. what we'll do is we'll run it. It probably will, when this first runs, it will run through this drawRect method anyway. At that point, this current point, which is a property of this class, will be set to 0. So we're always going to get some circle drawn at 0, 0. So to improve this, you probably would want to eliminate that first run through, but we'll run it anyway. Okay, so there you go. That's the first one. Now, if we double tap the screen, we can see that our application is working nicely. Okay. And so what's happening here is the user's tapping, it's going into the drawRect, that's updating the model with a new shape, and then once it's updated we immediately ask him for what the latest model, which includes the new shape plus all the old ones, and then we are iterating over that mutable array in this loop here, one shape at a time, and then we're finally drawing it out. And of course here what you could do is you could make shape a little bit more sophisticated by saying, you could ask what type of shape are you, what colour are you, and so on, or if it's rotated, were you rotated, and so on. In this case we're just keeping it quite simple. Okay, so just to summarise, that's the end of this tutorial, and what we've covered quite a lot of things. And first of all, we've done a custom draw view, which we've used this storyboard, which was, in a lot of ways it probably would have been easier not to do this, and to actually just attach the view to the view controller programmatically. Could have been easier because we had to do that wiring of it anyway right at the beginning. But anyway, that's our custom view. The other thing that we've done is we've used a protocol to provide a data source to this view, which allowed us to tell the view controller that the view had been updated, something had changed on it, and we could signal that via this delegate method, which was this update model with point, and that the view controller maintained the model, which we've defined in these two classes here, draw model and shape. And then once the view had signaled this update, it then requested to get the latest model here, which then the view controller provided the latest model, which is really just a copy of this model down here, and that was fed back into, back in the draw view. We asked that here, here it is, the self-delegate get latest model, and then we simply iterated over this mutable array of shapes, drawing each shape out at a time, and that way we could have our application draw in this way and build up the shapes. Okay. Of course, it'd be fairly easy now to take a UI image of this screen, which we could save to photos. And the other thing it'd actually be easy to do is to save this to persistent memory as well. It wouldn't be difficult to just completely save the draw model instance, which we can do using the user defaults, and then pull that up each time the application was loaded again. In which case the user would get the last image, the last sort of drawing that they were working on. Okay, and that's the end of this tutorial.